Welcome. This is Holly with Wild Blessings. It's August the 24th, and I am so excited to be sharing with you about my vacation I just took to the northern shores of Cass Lake in northern Minnesota with my husband and my family. And so I'll be sharing with you what I foraged for there and the things that I learned. But for now, right now, I'm actually garbling and herbing around with BlackStaining Polypore, which I'll tell you all about in just a minute. But first I wanted to just welcome you. So welcome all the new members. This is just such a wonderful community. I love it when you comment, when you participate. We have crossword puzzles, we have poetry, we have, everyone eats wild and shares what they've been eating. It's just exciting to do this together. And so thank you for joining me, and please share with others. I want to spread the wildfire. I really want to see people's lives restored. I want to reconnect with our right of our wild riches, of the things God's given us for free, all around us, not just for beauty, but for medicine and for food. And it makes you feel loved. It makes you feel like you're not alone. And loneliness is something that Jason, I'm going to ask him to come up here and share with me, because he just read an article on loneliness is just on a huge uprise with children, I think with all ages, but especially with kids. And I think a lot of that is going to take intentionality to overcome. But nature deficit disorder is something I talk about a lot. And the time that children spend outside is so diminished compared to what it was like when I was a child, or the way it ought to be. And so I wanted to invite you to have a drink.
Can we do that? Can we have something as our tea time
This
today?
is our tea time, and honestly, honey, I have no idea what this is. So let's see if we can figure it out.
I'm used to that, I think.
Yeah, we always have weird things in the fridge.
Yes.
And the freezer.
Okay.
It's something wild.
Something wild. And am I supposed to guess? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
That is...
Tart?
Yep, it's tart. Maybe it was...
I think it's turned into vinegar.
Yeah,
I think I made a
maybe
vinegar.
It's in vinegar too. So hey,
Woo!
If you're doing kefir...
Yeah.
Watch
If you
out.
let water kefir go for a while, that'll put hair on your chest. Okay, that's disgusting.
Okay. Right. Since you asked about this research.
Yeah, what did you read?
Okay, I was linked to this article on the Reader site called Quillette. I hope some of you have discovered that. And the article is entitled, "Children Are Lonelier Than Ever." I like it when a writer references some good research, especially current research. And so this article describes how teen mental health outcomes have been studied by psychologists. They use a number of different markers to determine our teens' mental health improving or otherwise changing. And so they have all these different markers they use, but they noticed that while it seemed things were getting better when the study was first started, about the year 2010, across the board, teen mental health began to decline. In study after study, they proved through their testing that the decline indicated that we might be entering a troubling era of sustained decline of well-being among teens. Now, in case you're thinking, well, maybe this is just a small group, they studied 1 million teens and over a period of 18 years. So that's a good substantial amount of information. They studied children or teens in 37 countries and 5 different continents. So they really believe that they're showing a global trend. Now, the researchers came to some conclusions that I know I sent to you in a message, and I thought this was very important. In trying to decide what was causing this decline, they looked at several markers or indicators in their study. So they looked at gross domestic product, how much money do they take in, income inequality, and even things like the number of children born to a woman. But none of those things seem to be clear indicators as the contributing factor. It says, however, when they added access to smartphones and hours kids spent on the internet to their models, the statistical alarm bells came to life. And in case you were wondering, this was not an instance of a tiny effect showing statistical significance because it was such a huge sample size. The relationship between smartphone and internet usage and loneliness among teens was huge.
Wow.
So that's what the article indicated. Well, if you look at the description below, I'll put in a link to the article.
Let's do that. That'd be great. Okay, yeah, I also read that article, and one of the things it said was even if you are being very intentional and keeping your child off the phone and you're sending them outside to play, the other kids are on their phones, and it gives them a sense of great loneliness that they're missing out. But even the children that are on their phones connecting through the phones are not feeling connected, and they're not joyful. They're feeling lonely. So it's going to take some serious reclaiming of our souls, of nature, and of time outdoors, and of just being children to be able to restore that. Nature is so restorative, and I really, it just breaks. It's one of my life goals, honestly, is to help children to embrace nature, not be afraid of it, be empowered by it, know what poison ivy looks like so that they don't get a horrible rash, know how to use plantains so if they get stung by a bee, they can immediately neutralize that. You know, just learn to navigate and learn the riches in nature and find your joy. Okay, so yes, sir. All right, so that was my loneliness in nature were some of my wild thoughts. I'm really concerned about this, and I think that the time we spend together, please invite friends, if you know of children that are homeschooling or whatever and would like to be a part of this, it's a free class, and I think they can learn along with me. We can all learn together, and it's such a wonderful community. All right, so I'm going to do a cooking demo, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this BlackStaining Polypore, and it's called Maripulus sumsteni. And I don't know much about mushrooms at all, so I had to contact Rachel Glokowski and ask her, what is this? My friend Diana said, hey, come on over, Holly, there's some big mushroom here. I thought it was going to be chicken in the woods or hen in the woods, which I'm excited about. I love those. They're more orangey colors, so I'm thinking, what is this thing? Look how huge this is. And so when I picked it, it was a really light yellow and not dark like it is now. But you can tell it's a polypore because it doesn't have any gills when you look on the underside of the cap or the frond. And it's also extremely stringy. So, yeah, this is good eating, especially when it's older like this, to make it into a stock, which is what I'm going to teach you to make now. You can make it into jerky. You can do a stir fry, which I'm going to show for a later video, which is why I've been chopping these up. The way you clean out a mushroom like this is you fill up your sink with salt water and clean it off as best you can first, chop it up, and then throw it into that big bin of salt water, and then just let it soak for about 10 minutes. And that is a really great way to clean it. Because it's called BlackStaining Polypore, when it's bruised or when it's cut, it will turn black or a dark brown. And it's turned my nails that color, it turned my sink that color. It's really amazing how it does that. So it's not hen in the woods. If hen in the woods is out and it looks similar to this, it'll be a darker orange, and it comes out in the fall. This comes out in July and early August. So that's a big difference there. Let's see, what else did I learn from Rachel? Fan-like fronds or multiple caps. Look at all these little caps, multiple caps. The more mature it gets, the stringier it gets. Sometimes when you cut it, you have to wait 5 to 10 minutes or so for it to turn color. You can see this was yesterday I picked it, so it's really turning black. It doesn't mean it's gone bad at all. All right, so let's go ahead and do the stock. So what I did is I went ahead and cleaned it, and then I'm using an Instant Pot. I put it on saute, a little bit of butter in the bottom and some water, and I threw a whole bunch of the cleaned, I chopped it up in pieces, kind of like about, you know, just chunks, because you're trying to get as much surface area as possible so that it can really release its juices and its nutrition. So then I just threw that into Instapot, and I let it cook like that saute for maybe 15-20 minutes. And now I just turned this off. Oh, let me show you what else is in this. So I'm adding onion and celery and carrots, a little bit of garlic, and then these are evening primrose seed pods, which are so high in nutrition. We'll do probably a whole class on evening primrose, which is Oena therabiensis, because it's absolutely one of my favorites. So these are the seed pods. The flowers have already bloomed. These are the flower buds that are getting more and more ready with the sepals to open up and bloom, and they usually bloom at night, around 8 o'clock at night. You can Google on YouTube and watch an evening primrose flower open. They're beautiful, they're yellow, they're gorgeous. But the flower buds are delicious and tender and yummy to eat even in a salad because they're really tender. But the seed pods, once they've become seed pods, once they have flowered, they are pretty fibrous. So I have a whole bunch of them here, and I'm going to throw those in to saute along with my stock that I'm making with the mushrooms. I'm not going to waste anything, because once I have all of this cooked, I'm going to strain it off and then can or freeze the mushroom stock, which is going to be amazing. I'm going to add a whole bunch of wonderful things to it. What am I adding? I'm adding some water, and then I'm adding red wine, a little bit of fish sauce, and black pepper. I'm going to add to it sage and thyme. So all of this I'm just going to throw right into the Instapot right now, and I'll be right back. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I also put some miso in here, because miso is super nutritious and makes a really great broth in and of itself. All right, so I put that in. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up with water all the way up to its fill level, and not forgetting to put in the pepper and the wine. So I'm going to go ahead and put the wine in now. Maybe a teaspoon of peppercorns. I've already got the thyme and the sage in there. You could add whatever you want. If you wanted to add rosemary, if you wanted to add bay leaf, that's fine too. Okay, so then I'm just going to, let's see, how am I going to do this? I'm going to fill it up with water and then put the lid on and then have it cooked on high for about a half an hour. And by the end of this class, you'll be able to see it. I wish you could smell it, because it smells amazing. Okay, it's about half my amount of water. Some other things you can do is you can make jerky out of the mushroom, or this is a really particularly good mushroom to actually freeze chunks of. So I don't intend to throw any of that out. Although I did put some in my woods. It loves to grow on oak trees, on the roots of oak trees, or on the trunks of oak trees. And so I really, really would love to see this growing on my land. So that's one way you can spread the love, is to put it where you want it. So I've already done that. Okay, so let me put this on. And put it on manual, and we'll do it for high pressure for 30 minutes. Okay. Whoops, did I put the wine in? Yes, I did. Okay, so that'll be good. And then later, I'm going to make this stir fry that Rachel showed me how to make, and I'll give you the link to her site on that, her YouTube channel, so you can learn from her, because she really knows what she's talking about, and I'm just a beginner when it comes to edible mushrooms. Never eat a mushroom unless you're 100% sure of what it is. And because I'm just a newbie when it comes to mushrooms, I always go to an expert before I would ever try to eat one or even harvest it. So let me get these things out of the way. And what's next? Okay, so I wanted to tell you about my vacation. I went to a place that I've gone to for 65 years. My grandparents started a boys' camp up in the north shores of Cass Lake in northern Minnesota, which is near Bemidji. And we had So every summer I would be there as a child. It was a boys' camp, so my brother and all my cousins that were boys would attend the camp, and the girls would play in the cabins, their parents' cabins down the lake. And we had such an incredible time. And so I want to show you a video that we put together of our time together, and then I'm going to give you a slideshow of the plants that I got to play with, and the trees, just a few of the trees that I love about up at camp. And what else did I do? Oh, there were some wild encounters with a few animals, and then we did some playing in nature with my granddaughters. So I will join me with that, and I'll be back here afterwards. It is such a beautiful day. I'm here on the shores of Cass Lake, down by the rifle range. And my grandfather started a boys' camp here in 1935. His name was Otto John Endries, and my grandmother Helen Endries, the two of them and their 5 kids, including my father, built this camp. It's still running today. It's one of the top 10 family-run camps in America. And it's a pretty awesome place for boys to come, but it's also a great place for the sisters to come because we all have a cabin down the lake from the camp. So this is the rifle range, and really what I'm interested in is showing you what weeds are here in the North Woods. And my grandmother used to call this These Thy Woods. So here I am in These Thy Woods on the shoreline. And it's interesting, the camp is standing next to me are my granddaughters. This is Nora, and this is Olivia, and this is my grandpup, and what's his name? Fluffy. So we're having so much fun together, and I'm just really happy to be with them. So tell me what this is.
This is our store that we found. We got all sorts of fun stuff that we made.
Yeah, this is
beautiful. We put it all together. And Dad, we're going to see the deadheads.
Are those eagle claws or what are those, Jace? Come look. Wow, or are those raccoon claws? See those claws? Wow. Look at all these cattails over here. Let me see if I'm at the stage yet where I'm actually pushing. See if I can do this. There are so many cattails here in northern Minnesota, and the cattails are called the supermarket of the swamp. And there's so many things that you can eat with the cattail. The roots in the wintertime can be made into flour. The early shoots in the early spring are like cucumbers. There's this goo inside of the sheaths of the cattail stalk that is so medicinal, and it's almost like aloe in its skin qualities for healing. And then the early cob, before it turns brown, before it's pollinated, is the green part, the green flower, and that, the female part, tastes kind of like an artichoke, but you can eat it almost like corn on the cob. And then the male part, right here, is really, really high. Right, this is the male part, and this is the female part. And this is usually yellow. It's already been the pollen. So this has already been pollinated, and all of these green flowers are now, you know, turning to seed. So this is no longer edible. But once this has dried out completely, it's really good fluff for insulation, for stuffing. There's lots of good uses for it, but it's no longer really edible. But I do love cattails, and they're everywhere here in northern Minnesota. Okay, so there's a lot of boneset. This is Eupatorium perforatum, and the reason why it's perforatum is because look at how those lanceolate leaves literally are perforated by the stalk. So it goes this way, then that way, then this way, then that way. Very unusual. And then this becomes a beautiful white flower. This is a very famous plant that we're going to talk about when we talk about white umbels. And this was actually one of the plants that was useful in healing people during the 1918 Spanish flu. So, boneset. Here's those Cockleburs again. Look at all of that. This is not burdock. And then behind there is Joe Pyeweed. Look at how beautiful that is. That kind of a mauve color. And that's particularly good for kidney stones and for bladder issues. So much abundance. I think these are raccoon marked days.
Where are you guys?
I want to talk about this tree because it's such a special tree. They're all over camp. And I don't have one on my land in North Carolina. I have to drive to one at Peaceful Acres. But this is the basswood tree, the Tilia europa or Tilia americana. And the whole tree is good for food. I mean, a delicacy. So I'm just going to walk through its season really quick. So in the early spring, the sap is running and you can tap it, and it has a very delicious sweetener, kind of like maple syrup, only it's a lot less dense. Maple syrup is like 40-to-1, and this is a lot less. I can't remember what the specifics are, but you'd have to do a lot more boiling to get syrup, but you can drink it as a refreshing drink. That's the sap. The bark, the inner bark, is really delicious, but you want to get that in the early spring too, when it's the highest in the sugar content. This is really a famous tree for its flowers, which smell very much like jasmine and honeysuckle, and the bees love this. And they bloom between May and June for a couple of weeks, and a lot of beekeepers will take their hives near a basswood forest so that they can collect all of give the bees as much linden honey as they want to make. And so you can pretty much get a monocrop of honey when it comes to linden, if you're careful, and can then collect the honey right as soon as it's been created. So then the early leaf buds, before these are leafed out, taste very much like sweet peas, and they're so good. And I'm always having to beat the deer to it, and the deer always get the ones that are down low, and I have to reach up high to get those, and those are delicious. But I would love to be able to harvest these up here at camp. When they open up into the early leaves, these are mature, older leaves, and they're still edible as a green, but the early leaves, light green, are like a Boston lettuce. Really tender, super sweet. You can eat it raw, chopped up in a salad. So good. Then the flowers come out, and the flowers taste very much like jasmine, and they're very fragile. So if you want to dry them, you can dry them like on a screen in your car on the dashboard or something for a couple of hours, and then store them because they're very fragile. But I have a lot of that, and I use those for my Orient or for my Asian wild food feast because they taste just like jasmine tea. They can also be eaten raw in salads. Then they get pollinated and they turn into these really cute little seed pods. I'm going to pull one off. And these seed pods have this nut inside of them, which you can take out, crack with your teeth or with a hammer or something, and take the nut out and grind it into a paste. And I have never done this, so I'm going to do this probably with you, Nora, if you want. And do you like chocolate? Sometimes. Okay, well this is plant chocolate. So you would smash that open, get the nut out, and grind that with a mortar or pestle into a paste, and mix that with the flowers. And it's supposed to have like a chocolatey taste. And so I'm curious, and I want to see what that's like. I've never tried that before. And I'm also going to caper these, so that'll be fun. So this is such a gift. This is an amazing gift, and I'm so excited to be around so many basswoods, or this is Tilia europa or Tilia americana. I'm not sure which one. But as I was talking with you, a bald eagle flew over my head, so that was kind of exciting too. There's an eagle's nest over here between Cass and Buck Lake. So let me share with you Nature's Wave in August up in Cass Lake, Minnesota. Meet my grandparents, Cap and Mom Endries, as the campers referred to them, Pop and Amma to me, and to the other grandchildren. And here to the right is an aerial view of Cass Lake where they built Camp Chippewa. This was my view as my flight to Bemidji took us right over our destination in this so special place. In this slideshow, I will show you the plants that I discovered. There are far more than I reference, and some of our wild encounters, and a few of the magnificent trees that populate these thy woods, as Amma called them. This is Amaranth. Amaranthus species. There's 60 species of amaranths. Another name for them is pigweed, and I was absolutely shocked to find that they were all over the sandy shores of Cass Lake, thousands of them. The tasty young leaves on the left-hand side can be steamed like spinach. The seeds on the right-hand side are sort of nutty. I would never suggest eating them raw, so you would want to either roast them or cook them in boiling water or pop them like you would popcorn, but don't eat them raw. They can be ground into flour. Amaranth seeds protein is similar to an animal protein, and it's the highest plant protein of all of the edible plants at 27 grams of protein for a half a cup of amaranth seeds. So it's exciting to think that there's all this free food right there on the beach. Gluten-free is another wonderful thing about this because this grain is very popular. You can actually buy it in stores. You can buy it as a flour. It was used by the Aztecs over 8,000 years ago in making breads. So this is a great find, and I was so pleased to discover it there on Cass Lake. These are Cockleburs, Xanthium strumarium, and at first I thought they were burdock, but this is so not burdock. Burdock is one of my favorite wild edibles and is highly nutritious, but Cockleburs are toxic. A toxin found in the seeds can cause abdominal pain, vomiting, low blood sugar, seizures, and even severe liver injury. So don't think this is burdock. Ingestion of the Cocklebur seedlings and seeds can be fatal to livestock, so it's a good idea just to rip these up. Stems are thick and they have a purple or black spots. The leaves, as you can see, are alternate. They are also triangular and lobed and coarsely toothed leaves, and they have a very, very distinct smell. The fruits look like little footballs that are prickly. They've been referred to as porcupine fruit. And if you look at the very tip of the football, it has like two beaks on it. I don't know if you can see that. Two seeds are enclosed in each of the burrs, and I think this is so fascinating. One is larger than the other. The bottom seed germinates within a year and maintains the plant's presence when times are good. The top seed appears to have a much longer dormancy period. These longer-lived seeds can sit in the soil for decades before they decide that they're going to germinate. So I just was blown away at these pictures I found on the net of the hooks on the edge of on the ends of these little burrs. And you can see that this is another hitchhiker plant that has no problem getting all over the place, just going on dog's fur or on your socks or whatever. So honestly, if I had thought about it, I would have ripped up all the Cockleburs in front of our cabin anyway. So this is not edible. Xanthium strumarium. And I was amazed at how much mullein was everywhere. And of course, at this point, most of them were no longer in flower. But there was still some first-year plants like the one you see on the left. And over at Cedar Island, there were tons of mullein spikes. I gave a whole hour lecture on this amazing plant, so I will link that in our Wild Blessings Facebook group if you want to be wowed by this amazing plant and all it has to offer. Okay, common milkweed. Not a class goes by where I'm not bragging about milkweed's many virtues, and I was astonished to find it growing in the sand along Cass Lake and in profusion on Cedar Island as well. Okay. Then it was interesting to me, there was another type of milkweed that I've never seen before called Asclepias incarnata, or swamp milkweed. And so here's what I learned about this. All parts of this plant are considered edible, but they must be cooked. Unopened flower buds, young shoots, young seed pods, harvested when they're 3 to 4 centimeters long, can be consumed in small quantities, but they must be cooked. The flower clusters, I learned, can be boiled down and made into a sugary syrup. Medicinally, a tea made from the roots is anthelmintic, carminative, diuretic, emetic, strongly laxative, and stomatic. The tea is said to remove tapeworms from the body in 1 hour. That's interesting. It's also been used in the treatment of asthma, rheumatism, syphilis, worms, and as a heart tonic. So it's very similar in its medicinal actions as the Asclepias, trying to remember, the common milkweed that I'm used to eating. So you can see at this point, the on the right-hand side, they're going, those seeds, those little parachutes are coming out. And so I didn't sample this, but the flower smells delicious. Wild snapdragons were all over by the rifle range, and those are edible flowers. And so you can put those in salads. They have a nice crunch factor. They don't taste like much, but they are edible. Wild 4 o'clocks, or Mirabilis nyctogenea. We found wild 4 o'clocks among the horsetail and amaranth on the sandy shores of Cass. It's super invasive and weedy, and it crowds out most perennial plants, but the flowers sure are pretty. Turns out that even though this is not an edible plant, it has a lot of medicinal giftings. You can put the flowers in salads, though. The root is used in the treatment of stomach complaints, and a pinch of the powdered root is said to relieve hunger. It can also be used after overeating to relieve discomfort. A poultice of the powdered root can be applied to swellings. So these are all things I've just been learning as I've been researching. Bugleweed, mint, Lycopus species. That was all. You can see the cocklebur there and the horsetail, so that was just all there in the sand as well. You can make a tea out of those leaves. It's another mint. Very aromatic. It has a strong minty smell. Smartweed, or lady's thumb, is another common name for this plant. It is a summer annual, and it was fun to see them growing along the shore. The leaves, young shoots, flowers, and seeds are edible. Lady's thumb contains natural fibers, sugars, fats, and tannins. Excuse me. Okay, riverbank grape, or Vitis riparia. Some consider riverbank to be a really weedy pest, sometimes creating dense masses and smothering other plants and even small trees. Though it can become aggressive along woodland edges and other disturbed areas where seed is spread, it is typically better behaved in the shadier riverbanks and mature forest where it competes well with other forest species. It's an important food source and cover for insects, birds, and other wildlife. Okay, I could not find any of the grapes on there, but grape leaf I use all the time in cooking. I love to brine them, roll them up, put 10 of them together and roll them up into a briny liquid and then use them for dalmates. This was exciting. I found a ton of groundnut or hopnus, Apios americana, on Cedar Island. Look how beautiful those maroon pinkish blooms are. They have a very sweet, musky aroma, and you can eat those flowers raw or cooked. And they do have edible beans that taste like peas, but I have never tasted those, and I didn't see any of them on the plant. However, the part that I'm really excited about are the tubers. So another common name for them are the American potato bean. They produce small tubers that are arranged along individual rhizomes like a rope or a string. And so the way to find them is to follow the vine all the way down to where it goes into the soil. and that's very hard to do because it's also very matted. So I think what I would do is I would probably mark that spot with a flag or something so that as things grow up, I'll know where to go back to find the tubers. Both the seeds and the tubers are edible, and during the 1600s, the Native Americans taught the settlers to eat groundnuts for sustenance. It was crucial to their survival. 20% protein, 3 times more than potatoes. They've also been called rosary tubers because of the way they're strung together like beads. They taste like potatoes. You can bake them, fry them, roast them, mash them. There's a sticky latex inside of them, so don't eat it raw. Another similar plant is the American hog peanut. And this is, these have underground fruits or peanuts that are dug up and eaten by wild pigs. And I guess that's why it's called the hog peanut. I don't think I can pronounce that. I'll try. Amphicarpia, whatever. Okay, that's just too much. Okay. It has an edible root and edible seeds. It's in the pea family, the Fabaceae family. Just like peanuts, like a legume. Peanuts are not actually nuts, they're a legume. The vines can either be annual or perennial depending on the type and the location. They tend to grow in quantities that are large enough to justify a little bit of digging to harvest the roots along with the seeds. Unfortunately, I have tons of this in my backyard, and I'm glad for that, but what it does is it just strangles all the other plants in that area. So I tried to get rid of it, but I came back from vacation and it was just strangling all of my evening primrose and goldenrod and everything that was in my backyard. So I hope to have lots of good peanuts to eat. The roots are high in carbohydrates, and they taste like peanuts when they're raw, but really it's probably best to cook them. All right. The shape of these leaves is very similar to poison ivy. So you can see how that rachis, the little petiole below the terminal leaf on the far right, is longer than the lateral leaflets. So there's 3 leaflets to this leaf, just like poison ivy, and it has the same structure in the lateral leaves being asymmetrical with the midrib. So the midrib, as you can see, is not going down the middle. It is kind of like 1/3 off, just like poison ivy. So here's a picture of poison ivy. Poison ivy is such an important plant to ID. I just gave a whole talk on this a couple of weeks ago, which I'll put in, I'll link you to. It's just super important to learn, because if you don't know this plant and you sit on this plant or rip it up with your hands, you could end up so miserable with a disgusting rash. And so Livy and I were playing and making a fort, and we made it right next to this patch of poison ivy. So it was a good opportunity to teach Nora and Olivia how to identify poison ivy, and we were super careful not to touch it. But after that, we found a new location for our fort. False Solomon seal is all over camp, and it has these beautiful red berries, which are edible. They're kind of cinnamon, kind of like cinnamon candies. They're these little flowers that turn into berries are called plumes. Earlier in the spring, the young shoots of both false and true Solomon seal are delicious wild edibles that are kind of like asparagus, and I did a lot of cooking with that earlier and have classes on that as well. So here is true Solomon seal, and they have Polygonatum biflorum, and they have the berries that are not edible, and they're beautiful blue clusters underneath the leaf stalk. Speaking of blueberries, there was lots of blue cohosh. These gorgeous blueberries are, I can't pronounce that. Anyway, they were up on the esker and also in front of my cousin Terry's house. And the girls and I found them all over. And they love shady locations and rich soil. They love hardwood forest. Blue cohosh was popular among physicians and midwives during the 19th century and was an official drug in the United States pharmacia until 1890. It was used for the treatment of a number of conditions, including uterine inflammation, arthritis, and heart failure, but its primary use was for labor induction during childbirth, and it's still used for that. Boneset was all over the place, but mostly on Buck Lake, over by the diving tower. And you can see it's called Eupatorium perfilatum because of the way the leaf is pierced by the stalk. Beautiful white umbels. This is a powerful herb for healing colds and flu. You can see on the bottom right there's some dogbane, which is a poisonous look-alike to milkweed. Okay, horsetail grows prolifically along the shores of Cass Lake and also on Cedar Island. The girls and I collected these sword-like leaves and popped their sections to make-believe green beans for our nature fun times. Horsetail is a fern that contains many beneficial compounds, but most notably silica and antioxidants. It's found in the form of tea and tinctures and capsules. It has multiple potential health benefits, including improved bone, skin, hair, and nail health. So even thinning hair or hair that needs more tenacity or tensile strength, it's a great idea to make shampoos with that. And I have used it quite a bit in my hair and bone tea blends. It's excellent for if you've got weak bones, osteoporosis, or a broken bone, and you want healing. So horsetail is amazing. And they're beautiful. They look so prehistoric to me. Okay, here's some Lobelia inflata. Another word for it is pukeweed or Indian tobacco. And it is just such a beautiful plant, and I found this all along Buck Lake. When I returned to North Carolina, my garden was overrun by purple. So I harvested 1/3 of them, and they are on my counter, which I'll tell you about later. Okay, so playing with nature. So a lot of these plants that we just went over, there was so much more. There was cattails, there's wild rice up there, but we don't have any on Cass Lake. There's a rice lake which is nearby, and I didn't get a chance to go over there to show you what that looks like. But there's a lot of bulrush and a lot of weeds or reeds, and so much more. There's plantain. Livy got stung by a bee, and so we got to use the plantain to help her neutralize the sting. But there's a lot of fun with playing with nature, so here's just a few pictures of that. So the girls would collect things in a basket, and over on the left you can see some cedar and burr from acorns from a burr oak, and there's some blue cohosh berries and tansy and just all of that beautiful stuff. So then they would decorate it and make it into like a little grocery store on the right hand side. There's Livy collecting things, and then she had made a little fort over by Buck Lake for her stuffed animals. She called it Pikachu's Palace. We went on a treasure hunt, and Jason made this treasure skull and crossbones flag for the treasure hunt, and so we decided to have this down at one of our forts, keep people away. And just watching the girls walk through the woods and seeing the beautiful red and white pines and looking at the shadows as the sun would come through the forest was just so magical to me, and such a joy to see my granddaughters enjoy the same place I used to play when I was a child. We had a few wildlife sightings, and the favorite one, I think, of all of us is the loon. The loons are ever present in northern Minnesota. The cry of the loon is so haunting and magical. Livy loves loons, and she calls them her loons. Here are some fascinating facts that I found about loons that made me appreciate them even more. Loons spend most of their time in water. Unlike other birds, it has solid bones which reduce buoyancy and facilitate diving. Loons can dive 200 to 250 feet in depth, and they can stay up to 5 minutes under the water. Loons can reach speeds of 75 miles per hour in the air, but it needs to run 100 to 600 feet to reach the speed required for departure, and they run this on top of the water. Loons are diurnal, which means they're active during the day. Loons form a monogamous couple that last for a lifetime. Loons produce yodel calls to announce occupation of a territory during the breeding season. Tremolo calls, like maniacal laughter, are a sign of aggression. And short hoots are used for communication between the parents and their chicks. So now that I know that, I can't wait to go back next year or whenever we go back to listen to the different sounds the loons make. During incubation, male and female loons take turns incubating the eggs and protecting the nest. After hatching, the chicks leave the nest with the parents. The parents feed the chicks whole food every hour from the time of hatching until they are up to 3 months old. Chicks are ready to leave the nest and swim immediately after hatching, but they cannot fly until the age of 11 weeks. Chicks often ride on the mother's back to avoid predators from the water. And loons can survive around 30 years in the wild. Right behind Trail's End is a tall white pine that has an eagle's nest in it. And it's just so awe-inspiring to see these majestic birds soaring in the clouds and soaring through the blue skies. While we were out swimming on Cass Lake, I think twice we saw eagles flying over fishing. So that was exciting. Another surprise was Livy found, and I think Nora found, a tiny snapping turtle that had just hatched, and they were so thrilled, so they brought him back to the cabin and they wanted to raise him as a pet. Nora named him Pokey. They researched online how to keep a snapping turtle happy in captivity and created an ecosystem that make it a successful venture with sand and rocks and vegetation, following the advice on a turtle website. Snapping turtles can live up to 150 years and get huge. Last year, Jonathan and Sarah were in a boat on Buck Lake when a snapper surfaced on the water with a shell that was 2 feet in diameter. It must have been at least 100 years old. Jonathan said that all of the fears of the monsters living in the depths of Buck were proven true after that experience. And one year we found a whole bunch of turtle eggs that had been buried in the sand. So the mother just buries them, covers them up and with her legs, and then she just goes away and they fend for themselves. So I didn't see a beaver, but evidence of their presence was seen with all the half-eaten trees along Buck Lake. There used to be a beaver dam on Buck over by the Eagle's Nest, but I thought the one over on the right-hand side looked like some kind of a tiki monster. And fish. Lots and lots of walleye, perch, northerns, muskie, all around, all through Buck, and all these lakes up in northern Minnesota are filled with fish. So Jonathan caught and filleted 3 walleye for our dinner one night, and we just breaded it in cornmeal and fried it up, and it was so good. Okay, so now I want to talk about Chippewa trees. This is my cousin Bob Endries, and he wrote a book about the camp Chippewa trees and shrubs. The campers use this book as a textbook for learning about the woods around camp, and Bob spent some good time sharing with me how to identify many of the hardwoods using the key in his book. I learned the difference between an elm tree and a slippery elm tree by the feel of the leaf, which was remarkably different. And the most common deciduous trees up at camp are the ironwood and the sugar maple. And I would also add that the basswood tree. So here's the ironwood, and it's not edible. Look at those serrated leaves and the parallel veins. I think that's called a double serration. But the wood of ironwood is extremely dense and makes great firewood and makes good fence post. You can see the fruits of the ironwood tree over on the right-hand side. And I don't remember. I think they can be edible, but they're not tasty. I don't know if they have any nutrition. I'm sure they have some. The sugar maple is really prevalent, and it was exciting. In fact, I didn't see any of the red maples. So the one on the right is a red maple. And the way you can tell the difference is between the lobes, you see this deep sinus, S-I-N-U-S. And if it's shaped like a U, as you can see in the one on the left-hand side, that's a sugar maple. And you spell sugar with a U. And so sinus, U, sugar, U. And over on the right is a red maple. And you do not want to tap a red maple because it is like so little sugar content. But Acer saccharum is the botanical name for the sugar maple. And all through the logging trails, or the trails in the path behind the cabins, is a place where there's tons of sugar maples. And friends of ours from the Mennonite community tap the sugar maples each year, and they make a lot of wonderful maple syrup. So it's a very prevalent tree. The conifers are astounding. There are jack pines, there's a tamarack, there's white pine and red pine, there's cedars, there's spruce, there's fir trees, but the ones that are the most common are the white and the red. So here on the left-hand side, you can see the red trunks of the red pine, and you can see the kind of greenish trunks of the white pine. The way you can tell the difference is the white pine needles. There's 5 per cluster. And a white pine called the sentinel pine was much taller than all of the trees around it on Star Island on the point called O'Neill's Point. For decades, canoe trips from camp would venture over to O'Neill Point, where the campers beached their canoes, hiked a short distance up the hill to the sentinel pine, and then climbed as close to the top as they dared. The main trunk was more than 4 feet in diameter. The sentinel pine may have been used by Indians as a lookout tower to watch for approaching enemy canoes in times of war. It died in the 1990s. But I just love these trees and these thy woods. Okay, then I want to go to red pine. Look at the red of the bark. And the red pine needles are long, with 2 per cluster. There used to be gorgeous stands of very tall red pines on Star Island and Norway Beach on the south shore of Cass Lake, but several strong windstorms have taken many of these tall red pines down since that time. They can grow up to 30 meters. So these are things I read about in Bob's book. The northern white cedar is all over camp as well. And you can see their little cones or fruits on the right-hand side. Interestingly, Cass Lake used to be called Cedar Lake, and Cedar Island is a remnant of that. And there's lots of cedars on Cedar Island, but there is no habitation on Cedar Island. It's just a skinny little island with a long sandbar and a wonderful place to visit, but not a place where anyone lives. But the trees there are still quite a few cedars, and there's a lot of wonderful edible plants. I already described the wonders of the basswood or the linden tree in the video, but these are some still shots of the various gifts of basswood. They're all over camp, and they tend to grow in clumps of 3 to 6 trees. I collected a ton of their seeds to make chocolate with them, and I left them at camp. So I'll have to find a nearby source that here in the high country besides the one that's at Peaceful Acres pasture. Okay, so let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea or the lakes resound and all that is in them, let the fields be jubilant and everything in them, let the trees of the forest sing for joy, the restorative power of nature. I love Minnesota's clouds, I love their crystal clear lakes. It's supposed to be the land of many lakes, or 10,000 lakes, they say. And I remember the campers that every night they would play the bugle, or Pop would play the bugle, back when I was a child, and I could hear it all the way down the lake. But the words to the song are, day is done, gone the sun, from the lake, from the hills, from the sky. All is well, safely rest, God is nigh. Fading light dims the sight, and a star gems the sky. Gleaming bright from afar, drawing nigh, falls the night. Thanks and praise for our days, neath the sun, neath the stars, neath the sky. As we go, this we know, God is nigh. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. If you're interested in sending your son to Camp Chippewa, you can go to campchippewa.com and you can see so much there. There are photos, there are videos of what camp's all about. It's truly life-changing. Let's see, the verse that I found that really summarizes what I feel about the time up there in the northern, in God's country in the North Woods and the lakes is right here on my board. And it says, let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad. Let the sea or the lakes resound, and all that is in them. Let the fields be jubilant and everything in them. Let the trees of the forest sing for joy. And honestly, this is the antidote to depression and loneliness, is to be in nature and to recognize you're not alone, and that the one who created this is a God of love, and he knows you, he made you, and he has created you to walk with him, especially in his creation. So I wanted to share that verse. If you want to memorize it, it's a big one, but that's going to be on my memory list for sure. All right, while we were doing the video and the slideshow, my Instant Pot did its magic. And so let's go look over it and see what's happened with the stock, and I'll show you what I'm doing with the stir fry. Okay, Jace, you over here? Eee. Oh, that's really hot. Oh, it smells so good. You know, it honestly has a very, a strong kind of like a beef smell. Do you think so?
I'm thinking more good mushroom smell. I mean, no, it's a very
It is
pleasing,
delicious.
If you like mushrooms, it's a pleasing mushroom aroma.
Yeah. All right, so back to the BlackStaining Polypore. This is what it looked like before I started cooking it. Along the cap or the frond, this is the tender part. So you would just take your knife and cut off the stringy part down here, and you can make stock out of all the stringiness that you want. But it's this tender part here that is the part you want to slice up small. So that's what I did with this, and I stir-fried it in some olive oil. And then I put a lot of evening primrose flower buds in here just for the tastiness of it all. And then I'm going to add to that a little bit of the fish sauce, not much, and a tiny bit of toasted sesame oil, just because that adds a really nice Asian flavor. And I'm going to take a spoon. Gosh, I don't even see where my ladles went. Do you see oh, here's my ladle. And I'm going to just spoon out a little bit of this broth and add that into my stir fry. So with this broth, I was telling you earlier that I'm not going to waste any of it. After it cools down, and you probably aren't going to see me do that, but I will take pictures, I'm going to take a larger pan or bowl and stick that in my sink and pour off all of the juice, the liquid, into the large bowl, saving all of those wonderful mushrooms and vegetables, letting that dry, and then putting it in my dehydrator, or just, you know, getting rid of all the excess moisture, putting it in my dehydrator, and then I will powder that into a really powerful mushroom seasoning. So that's another way of just using it all. Excuse me. Okay, I'm dying to see how this turned out. So for dinner, Jason and I had spaghetti, and so these are some udon noodles. Would you like to be my sampler? No? Okay. So I'm going to put a little bit of this on top of here. And I've lately been mixing Italian and Asian, so I'm going to do that right now, just because I feel like it. And I'm going to put on top of this mushroom mix some Parmesan cheese. Can you see that? That look good? Okay, so you don't want to sample, I guess you're full. You had cheesecake too, blackberry cheesecake. So, now, or you could put this on rice, or you could just put it in any stir fry as just one of the vegetables, or you could put it on, or just eat it by itself.
How about putting it on pizza?
That sounds really good. This is so good.
Your look wasn't exactly what I was expecting.
Oh my gosh, Jason, this is so good. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. What do I have? Probably 5 pounds of that. Oh my goodness. I want to dry some as well, because you can dehydrate and dry. I just want to eat the mushroom. And you can dehydrate it and dry it and then just eat it all winter long. It has a great chew factor. I think I flavored it perfectly. Actually, it doesn't need a lot of flavor. Oh, it's so good. That was amazing. Oh, I forgot to show you. Another thing you can do with garlic, and these are garlic flowers, is just take those little seeds and the flowers off, and you can throw them in either as you're cooking or put them in raw. And so that would be a nice addition as well. Okay, so we did our cooking demo. I will show you the powdered mushroom stock as I do that process later, but right now I wanted to show you what's on my counter, what's on Nature's Wave right now, and what I was foraging for today and what I'm going to do with it. So the contest this week is not going to be a poem. It's going to be, I want you to go forage, bring it all back, garble it, and put it on display. Garble it means just putting all of the evening primrose buds in one spot and all of your plantain seed stalks in another, and all of your lobelia or whatever you have, just getting it all organized and set it up really beautiful, or just however, just organize it. Make sure there's nothing in there that's not edible or medicinal, and then take a picture of it, and then I will put all of those names that participate into the raffle generator, and the winner will get, this is an amazing blend. It's called Northern Lights Black Spruce, and this is a Young Living blend. I think it has black spruce, blue spruce, some pines and firs, and just, it smells so good. It smells like the North Woods. So I really want to give this to one of you, and so I'm going to write on there, "In these thy woods," which is Alma's term for the woods up in Cass Lake. So that'll be a gift for one of you if you participate with me. So let's come over here and I'll tell you what's on Nature's Wave right now and what I collected today and what I intend to do with it. Okay. Okay, so we have late blooming blueberry bushes. These are not wild, but they grow wild up in Minnesota and Canada. The campers are always collecting them for Pop's birthday. But this is just a little bit of the blueberries that Jason collected today. And I just pulled off one of the branches because it was so low hanging. And I just wanted to show you how beautiful those are. The colors on this counter are amazing. So when I came back, what blew my mind was all the lobelia that's everywhere. And because I'm so busy with Wild Blessings, Jason recommended that I not do a garden this year. So I didn't have any green peppers or green beans or tomatoes, but I did have lobelia grow up, and I'm absolutely astonished that there was so much of it, and I honestly didn't know where it came from. So I feel like it's a gift from God. So I haven't really researched it yet, but I do know it's called puke weed because it's an emetic. I'm not sure how to use it as an emetic, but if you don't have ipecac or something and you need to throw up because you've consumed a poison or whatever, then there's some way of using this, whatever. So if you know, let me know. Probably Serene knows. So Serene's one of my mentors and she would know for sure. So let me know in the comments, Serene. So what I intend to do with this is bundle it up. Oh, the other amazing purpose for this particular plant is that it's a respiratory, it helps with lung issues and respiratory issues. And I thought, you know, with all the stuff going on in our society right now with health related to respiratory issues, this might just be a gift from God. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to bundle them up like that. And then I put them on my hanging racks. And then I will have this completely full by the time, you know, I'm not going to do it with you watching, but I'll have it all done. And then I'll just go hang it in the hallway. You want to hang it high and dry and out of the sun. Okay, so that is going to be beautiful. But then when that is completely dry, then I'll put it in my knitting basket and I will destem them so that I can put that into a mason jar and have that as a tea or however it's used. Or maybe I need to make it into a medicine. If you've worked with lobelia in flora, is what it's called, this particular species, then let me know. I'm going to do some research for sure. But because I'm not sure whether I need to make it into a tincture or dry it as a tea, I'm going to go ahead and do that research before I get them all dried. Okay. So, what else is on here? Okay, so this is Maximilian sunflowers, and these are these tiny little Asteraceae. They look like black-eyed Susans or sunflowers, but they're really tiny, and they line the entire road coming up from 194 up to our house, and it almost looks like it's glowing. It's just such a beautiful drive up from the mailbox. So that's beautiful. Let's see what else do we have. This is phlox, and these smell so good. So they're also really prolific, and so what I've been doing is once they bloom, I've been taking their heads, their seed heads, and throwing them away or putting them on the other side of the mountain or something where I can see their beauty but not have them take over my acre. This is sage, Russian sage, and Russian sage has the same medicinal qualities of the other sages, and it's just such a pretty, it's a beautiful flower. So I don't really tend to eat this one. I tend to just use it for eye candy.
I think we're going to need to wrap up now, so let's
okay.
You know, finish up with what you.
All right, so those are what I'm excited about. So what I want you to do is do your garbling. Find something that's out there, put it on your counter, take a picture of it, share it with us, and I'll give you a thread where you can put that, and then that can be part of the contest for the raffle next week. Okay, so if you're on YouTube and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button below and hit subscribe so you'll know when I release my next episode. You can also join me on Facebook at Wild Blessings with Holly Drake, which is a community of wonderful wild people who are learning together. And don't forget, please, to share this post and to support my classes and keep them free by joining me at wildblessings@patreon.com. So that would be really appreciated. See you next week, same time, same station at Teaching Tuesday, and see you then.